Hello, I'm Mary Nightingale. Welcome to the Piper Podcast, How I Grew My Brand. Here we talk to founders and CEOs about how they built their businesses, how the enterprise was born, how they nurtured it, with all the ups and downs, the mistakes and the good fortune they had along the way, and the key moments when they had to adapt the business to enable it to thrive. Today I'm talking with Sir John Timpson, whose great-grandfather William started a shoe shop with his uncle in Victorian Manchester while he was still a teenager. 160 years later, the Timpson Group is a much bigger concern, with more than 2,000 outlets, 5,500 people and a stable of 20 or so sister brands, some of them household names. And it continues to thrive as an award-winning family business with Sir John as chairman. Consistently in the top 10 of the Sunday Times 100 Best Companies to Work For, it operates an upside-down management system, employs hundreds of ex-offenders, gives colleagues free access to holiday homes and even the day off on their birthday. With the strapline "Great service by great people," there is no doubt that Timpson cares deeply about its colleagues and its customers, and that it truly is a brand legend. Welcome, Sir John.
Oh, it's very good to be here.
Well, it's very nice to talk to you. Thank you for sparing time for us. We're going to talk a little bit more about that upside-down culture and much more, obviously, as we go along. But let's go back to the very beginning and first describe the business when you first joined in 1964. You were just 21, weren't you? You'd only just graduated.
Well, it was actually earlier than that when I started. I had a year between school and university, and that's when I was a shoe shop assistant, because it was a shoe shop business in those days, mainly. We had 260 shoe retail shops and about 100 small shoe repair factories, purely doing shoe repairs, some of them inside the shoe shops. So it was sort of two businesses, but the main one was the shoe shops, and that's the one I worked with, and sitting on a stool in front of customers, trying on shoes for them, and that was where I started.
Did it feel to you when you joined that there was a palpable link to your great-grandfather?
I never knew my great-grandfather because he died in 1929, but I knew my grandfather, who really was the one who created the soul in the business. He ran a business rather differently from most. He spent a lot of time going around shops, meeting people, and as far as he was concerned, it was about the people as well as being about the business. He was an expert on shoes, particularly men's shoes. He was very good on property. But for me, he was an absolute star turn when it came to people, because when he went round the shops, it wasn't quite looking at standards and telling people what to do. He wanted to chat to them, not about the way they were running shops particularly, but he was talking about their families and what they were doing on holiday and how life was for them, and which was quite a different perspective. And that taught us a lot, and it made a big difference.
And it's something that I think you have continued very much, isn't it? It's the personal, which is at the essence of your culture.
Yeah, we learnt an awful lot from that, and I hope he'd be very proud about what we do today.
Yeah, I imagine he would. Was there ever any question that you would come into the family business? Did you ever think of doing anything else?
Not really. I left school a year early. I got 3 A-levels, so for some reason we did those when we were 17 in those days, not 18. My father didn't think it was worth me going to university, so he sent me to an accountant. And after 6 weeks, I walked out because I hated it. And that's when I started as a shoe shop assistant. And I've been involved in the business ever since, apart from going to university, which I did in the end, because despite what my father thought, I thought I was missing out, and so I had 3 happy years at Nottingham University. But during the university holidays, I was always doing things to do with our business.
So how did your career develop then over the years?
When I left university, I went to Clark's in Street, and I worked in one of their factories. I was useless in the factory. I'm one of the most impractical people in the world. But it was 6 months interesting with another organisation. I worked for in one of their shoe shops as well. They were called Peter Lord in those days. Then I came into the business and very quickly joined the buying department, and I'd spent about 6 very happy years buying ladies' shoes. Very happy because it meant I could go to Italy and go spend a week going from Rome up to Venice, looking at shoe shops, looking at fashions, deciding. It was actually a lot easier than you might think, because fashion always goes in the same direction, so you know it's logical, and Italy is a year ahead. So that's why we went to Italy and had a lot of very nice meals and nice time sitting at cafes
and observing the local styles.
Yeah, and
very nice.
Illegally taking pictures of shoe shop windows and copying the styles when we got back home.
Going forward a little bit, 1973, the business was sold to United Drapery Stores, and your dad, Anthony, was ousted by your uncle Geoffrey, but you stayed. It sounds like it would have been a very awkward time, was it?
It was very awkward because I was sitting in the boardroom and the directors' dining room they had in those days, would you believe, with all the people who had fired my father. So not very common. It didn't last for long like that, because the company that took us over, United Drapery Stores, took me out of the business, and I worked a very short time with John Collier's, which was part of United Drapery Stores, and then they said, well, why don't you go and run a business for us over in Liverpool? In fact, they said, do you live anywhere near Liverpool? And I said, I do. He said, well, we've just fired the managing director, the buying director, and the finance director. Can you go and look after it until we can find someone decent to do it? So that's what I did. I thought we might as well. And I was still there 2 years later when they asked me to go back and run our family business.
And 10 years later, you bought the family business back, didn't you? How did that work?
Well, we'd been trying to do it for a bit. Management buyouts hadn't really happened. I mean, it was only a change in legislation that in the early 80s that meant it was possible. So we got it all together so it would have been possible to buy it from UDS, the business that we sold to. But then UDS got bought by a business called Hanson Trust, and Hanson were actually quite keen to sell our business because that was what they were all about. They just wanted to sell bits of the business they bought. And so it all happened fairly quickly.
And then you sold, in 1987, you sold the shoe shops.
Yeah.
Which were the bedrock upon which the original company had been built. So that must have been an incredibly challenging decision, wasn't it?
It was a nightmare. I hated it, really, but because this was a business that I'd bought back. It was a business that my grandfather had built up, my great-grandfather had started. My name was above the door. We employed, I think it was 3,000 people in that business at that time. And I felt I was letting them down. But when I look back, it was the right decision, because subsequently, nearly all the other high street shoe shops disappeared as well. I mean, there are a few left, very few left, but if you go through a whole list of names of Saxo and Dulcis, Lillian Skinner, Freeman Hardy and Willis, Trueform, Stead & Simpson, etc., there are about 80 names like that have disappeared, all the multiples bar very few.
Yeah.
So, and I was the first one to get out.
But what was it that made you think that you should get out? Because we're talking about, you know, in the 80s, the high street was thriving. It was obviously way before the internet threatened bricks and mortar. So in the British Shoe Federation, you know, those multiples you're talking about, they were all thriving, weren't they?
They weren't doing quite as well. And the reason why was that suddenly more and more shops were selling shoes. You've got shoes in all the variety chains, Marks and Spencer's, Littlewoods, who were there around then. There was British Home Stores and so on. They were starting to sell shoes. And then all the clothing shops started to sell shoes, like Topshop and Topman and so on, Burton's. And it used to be just shoes from shoe shops, clothes from clothing shops. Shoes appeared everywhere. And then the other even bigger thing that made a difference was the trainers.
Yeah.
Sports shops became the biggest sellers of shoes. You needed big premises to stock all the shoes and everything, and high street rents was pretty high. The whole thing started to not work, and I realised, I think about 1985, that we couldn't afford to open a new shop. It just didn't make sense. So once you're at a stage you can't grow the business, then I think you're in difficulty.
Mm.
We were still just about profitable. If we'd stayed on, we would have been losing money a year later. So regrettably, and against what I really wanted to do, I decided it was the right thing to do to sell the business. And we're lucky to find someone to buy it, frankly. We managed to keep the shoe repair business as it was then, which was quite small. It was 130 shops. But that was part of the deal, that I sold the whole business and bought back the shoe repair business, such it was. And in a way, we started a new business.
You bought out the other three shareholders, didn't you, in 91? I'm just sort of going through your timeline. And after that, you sort of really started diversifying and acquiring businesses. So explain that process and how you grew the business then.
We did actually buy one business almost immediately when we'd sold the shoe shops, because I wanted the people to be confident in the shoe repair business that we weren't going to sell them as well. So part of that process was to buy another business, which we did, which is a very good chain of shoe repair shops. And we had ideas of we were going to float the business like everyone else. It was days when there was Body Shop and Sock Shop and Tie Rack, and they were all floating. They were the trendy ones on the high street, and we thought we were the next one.
But you didn't. You never floated. Why did you not?
Because one day I was sat in my study at home, and my late wife came in and said, "You must be mad. You'd never enjoy life in a public company. You wouldn't be able to put up with shareholders. Just don't do it." So she had a wonderful instinct, my wife. So I pulled out of the whole idea of floating the business, and that's why I had to buy all the other shares that anyone else had, and became 100% owner of the business.
How far down the line did you get towards flotation? Was it something you really considered?
Oh yeah, we were talking to. We've got our stockbrokers lined up. We were talking to. We were probably about 6 months away. That was it. But no, as soon as Alex, my wife, said no, that was it. We'd stopped.
Your wife, from everything I've read about her, seemed to have. She was obviously a wonderful character and great wisdom and so on, and a guiding light in many ways, I think, to you.
She had a wonderful instinct for common sense. She broke all the rules. We were foster carers. She was the foster carer for many years, and in that there were plenty of rules in that, and she totally ignored them all. All she was interested in was looking after the children in her way for their benefit, and she felt the same thing about the business, and she had an absolutely clear way through all the red tape and all the nonsense, and said, "That's what we're going to do."
And that's what you did. Which brings us right up to date now. So what is your core business now?
We're a retail service business, and the core is still Timpson, which is 1,350, 1,400 of our 2,100 shops, and they're still growing. We've opened 6 new shops in the last month, so it's still alive, very much kicking, but it's a very different business even from what it was when we were talking earlier of the 70s, when we had the boardroom bust up. It was purely a shoe repair business. It had just in 1969 cut its first key, and that was a massive piece of luck, because shoe repairs as a business has declined every year since about 1965. All to do with cheaper shoes and the construction of shoes and trainers. And so the demand for shoe repairs has gone down an awful lot. So we're very lucky that we got something else, which is key cutting, which has grown every year since 1969 when it started.
And grown in complexity. I mean, a key is no longer just a key, is it?
Oh, no, we have all this electrical stuff. Don't ask me, it's too complicated. But, I mean, car keys is a big part of our business. And fortunately, we've got a lot of our shops now in supermarket car parks. So perfect for helping out people with car key problems. We can get straight to the car because you have to in some cases. And we've added a very significant watch repair business to this as well, which also gets quite complicated. We started off doing watch straps and batteries, but it's a lot more than watch straps and batteries these days. So, yeah.
And mending mobile phones and dry cleaning. I mean, it's really a broad range that you cover.
Dry cleaning came when we bought Johnson's the Cleaners, although we were involved in it before that through some of our supermarket concessions. But the really very biggest part of our business is photo, because we have two big photo chains, well, the only significant ones in the country, which is Snappy Snaps and Max Spielman. And photo has unbelievably become one of the fastest growing parts of our business, although most people think it's old-fashioned and online, and no, that's a big part of our business.
In terms of scaling the business that we've been talking about, incredible rate of growth, Piper has a theory that when you scale a business, it sort of goes through sort of inflection points where there really needs to be a step change of some sort when they reach, a certain level, its turnover, number of locations, employees, whatever. Can you identify key inflection points for Timpson that have been particularly crucial in those terms?
A lot of the things that helped us grow the business have been through acquisition. The first major acquisition we made, which was in 1995, we bought the third biggest shoe repairer in the country. It was called Automagic, but it had 110 shops. They were losing money, but they had fantastic sites. The properties were really good, but the management wasn't that great, and they hadn't developed the key cutting business I mentioned earlier. And that was a fantastic success. That took us from, in no time at all, from about 400,000 a year profit to 3 million by putting the whole thing together and getting it right. And then we did it again when we bought a business called Mr. Minute in the UK, which then another step change. So that was that. And then getting involved in photo, that was, we acquired Max Spielman in 2008, which was, it was a business that was losing money and going very rapidly south. Sales were 50% down when we bought it, running up to Christmas 2008. We saw the opportunity. And now photo is a 12 million profit business to us, and it all started through that. And also that led us more and more to the business we now do with supermarkets. So that was another step change. And with supermarkets, we started getting involved with their vending business by selling passport photo booths, and now we have key machines, and now we're moving into automatic laundrettes, and so that's another part of the business. So you sort of, it's luck.
It's not just luck, is it?
Well, you can't sit down and go off and have an away day or a holiday with all the directors sat round and come up with a plan that's going to tell you what to do in the next few years. That doesn't work. It's helpful to think about it. What I do is I write an annual report for 15 years' time. So I've just written the report for 2040. Now that actually makes you think. You're going to be way off the mark, but it does prepare you for some of the opportunities that might come along on your way. But yeah, it's luck that these opportunities come, but the skill is to know how to take advantage of them. And we've managed to do quite a few of those.
But without compromising the core culture, the ethos, the sense of the business, because so many companies overexpand, they over-diversify, don't they? And often in the post-mortems of big companies, they say, oh, yes, well, they over-diversified. They forgot what they were about. But you don't seem to have forgotten what you're about, despite this increasing breadth of businesses that you encompass.
Well, we apply exactly the same culture, which we've only had for 30 years. I mean, the culture, it didn't come until late 90s. And it's now something we apply to every part of our business. It has to run the same way with the same values.
You're listening to the Piper Podcast with me, Mary Nightingale. Today I'm talking to Sir John Timpson.
It all started when I suddenly realised that there are only two things that matter in our business. One is doing a great job, and the other is to give great service. That's it, pretty blindingly obvious. We don't need to do market research to tell us that. And I read a book some years before about Nordstrom, the chain of stores in the States, who ran their business by giving authority to the frontline people, to the clerks who sought to serve the customers, and encouraged them to go do whatever they wanted, to go the extra mile and give a great service. And when I went back and suddenly realised that was the secret, I was hooked with the whole idea of giving freedom to the people who serve our customers to do whatever they wanted. I started doing that 30 years ago, and now the business is all about what we call upside-down management. So it's the people in the shops who've got the authority to run the business, and everyone else is there to support them and make it easy for them to do a good job. That forms the culture of business, and it also has led to us putting people right at the front of what we do.
How does it actually work in practice? Because it's obviously a wonderful idea, isn't it? But it could go very, very wrong.
Well, it didn't go at all to start with, because I cut out all the rules. I said we've got two rules from now on. One is you've got to look the part, you've got to turn up on time, and you've got to keep the shops. You've got to look smart, and so is the shop. And the second rule is you've got to put the money in the till. Apart from that, no rules. Then I realised after about 6 months of this, going around the shops and saying this is fantastic, it wasn't going to work, because the area managers who ran the shops just went round saying, "Ignore John, you'd work for me, and you do as you're told." So I suddenly realised I got to do rather more than just issue two rules. So we did three things. One is I talked a lot to those area managers, and we introduced rule number 3, really, which is no one in the business is allowed to tell anyone else what to do. So they had to learn to manage by not issuing orders, but everyone in our business manages their part of the business by helping their team to be the best they can be. So management in our terms is helping people, not just training, but also doing everything possible to make their job easy. So that's number one. Secondly, I got rid of head office. Not the people, not the building, but the idea of a head office being able to run the business. So we stopped people who were coming up with policies and setting out procedures and sitting in offices telling everyone else what to do. We stopped all that and made sure that they saw their role as a support and making life easy for the people out in the shops. And then the third thing I had to do is the way I discovered you can't do my upside-down management thing unless you've got really good people. And that meant the right sort of personality. And so we changed the way we recruited. And we just simply recruit for personality. I'm not bothered what they've done, what their CV is, what qualifications they've got, what they've written on their application form. All we're interested in, are they the sort of people for us? We want Mrs. Happy, Mr. Keen, Mr. Helpful, and we don't want Mr. Dull and Mr. Scruffy, the sort of people you don't want to work alongside. Our ideal is to have a business full of what we call 9s and 10s, people who rate 9 or 10 out of 10 on personality. And we've been doing that for 30 years, and it's made a hell of a difference. We still get it wrong, and we still get one or two that don't have the right personality, but on the whole, there's that personality connection between all the people who work for us, which puts a big buzz into the business.
And famously, you employ ex-offenders, don't you? About 10% of your workforce have criminal record. How did that start? How did that idea come to you? And how does it work as well?
Well, it didn't come to me, it came to my son James, who, 25 years ago now, was on an evening out, if you could have an evening out in prison. It was a function that included a dinner and a talk and a tour around the prison. And the tour was conducted by one of the inmates. And James was taken around the prison by a guy called Matt. And, well, he thought Matt was pretty okay and said, here's my card. When you get out, get in touch and we'll give you a job. And that's how it all started. Matt actually is fast approaching his 25-year service now.
Wow.
He's still with us. And actually it's more than 10%. It's about 12% of our workforce today joined us from prison. We've made a large number of mistakes in trying to employ people who are far too naughty to be employed and all the rest of it, and how we get on with prison governors and so on. But we tend to take on probably 3 or 4 every month. We've got someone who runs it. We call it the Timpson Foundation, and it's something which needs to be organised, particularly to make sure in the first few months anyone who joins us, especially if they come straight out of prison, we know how to look after them because they need help. Suddenly you're in a world where it's not very helpful. Quite often you've lost your home, you've lost your family, you don't have any source of money, and that's why the job's so important. And it starts to help them build their life again. But it's been fantastic. Hardly any reoffend, whereas the general experience is that over 60% of people leaving prison reoffend within 2 years. It doesn't happen with us. Mind you, we do pick the right personalities.
So who wouldn't? I mean, you say some people are too naughty to employ. So who wouldn't you employ?
Well, we don't employ sex offenders because we're involved with the general public, and we don't employ anyone who's been convicted of arson, because I don't think our insurers would be too pleased about that, and anyone involved in terrorism. Outside that, it's purely a question of whether they've got the right personality for us.
It was quite controversial, though, wasn't it? I remember the tabloid headlines at the time, cons cutting keys, you know. It writes itself, doesn't it? Was there ever a moment when you thought, well, no, we can't do this, this is just too much?
Well, I had my doubts to start with. I mean, I wondered, yes, what would customers think? What would our colleagues think? But my son James, who was starting it off, had no doubts. And his mother, back to Alex again, she had absolutely no doubts and said, right, well, if you can find a job for one, you can find a job for 10 of them. Go and find some more. And she was right. They were both right. Customers come to us because we employ people from prison, because they admire the fact we do it. And the fact it's been a success is due to the help that those we've recruited from prison have had from the people they've worked with alongside them in the shops, because they've done a fantastic job in helping people completely change their lives, which I think they're pretty proud of, and so they should be.
Yeah, it's wonderful. You are, I mean, this is the most obvious statement, you are very much a family business, aren't you? You're the chairman. James joined in 99, became the CEO, and now actually he's taking time to be the prisons minister, isn't he?
He's left me.
He's left you. I imagine he might be back at some point.
He'll be back, yeah.
Yeah. But he's prisons minister at the moment, which is also pretty remarkable. His wife, Roisin, joined. Grandsons are already involved.
I've got 2 grandchildren working in the business. I think another one will join me very definitely. I've got quite a few more.
Is there a pressure on them to join, or is it something that they...
No.
Well, I suppose you can't generalise, can you? But do you think they feel an obligation at all?
No, I wouldn't stop them joining if they wanted to, but I wouldn't encourage them to stay if they weren't of the right calibre, because if you're part of a business and you're part of the family, you've got to live up to what the rest of the business expects, and you've got to have a worthwhile role, and you've got to be good at it.
And if one of your family members wasn't good at it, would they be fired like anyone else?
Yes. One of my adopted children has... I think we fired him twice, actually.
Oh, no.
Not for him.
Okay, not for him. So, because, nepotism is a bit of a dirty word, isn't it? But it clearly seems to work in your business. If you're a member of the family, maybe it does equip you to understand and work for the company effectively.
It provides consistency, and everyone who works for us wears a badge, and it says on it as part of the family since, and it puts the date when they joined us. We regard everyone as part of our family. And that's why even today I spend at least one day a week going around visiting shops, chatting to people, not so much about the business, more about them and how we're treating them. And because one thing we have learnt is that if you've got the right personalities, if you've got those 9s and 10s out of 10, you've got to look after them. And that's why you mentioned early on, I think, about our holiday homes and my dreams come true and birthdays off and all these things. That's part of us saying thank you. We think it's very important that we look after the people who are looking after our customers.
It's almost a utopian ideal, John, isn't it? I mean, it almost sounds too good to be true. Holiday homes and dreams come true and all of that stuff. I mean, there's a hard business at the centre of this, isn't it? How do you combine the two? How do you make them work alongside when they would seem to be kind of almost mutually exclusive?
Well, it seems really obvious to me that if you really do look after your colleagues, then they're going to do a good job for you. And that's why the birthdays off started and the holiday homes. And the Dreams Come True was an idea I came up with about 15 years ago, because the business for the family has been a bit of a dream come true. So we should use the business to help others within the business to also have their dream come true. So we've now got lots of colleagues who've been on holidays they'd never think of, met relatives they've never met before on the other side of the world, had dental treatment they couldn't afford, had IVF treatment. We're spending over £1 million a year on these sort of things, so that we started by saying we make one dream come true every month. Now it's about 250 dreams a year. It makes a big difference, and it shows to them how important they are to us as a business.
So it pays.
I'm sure if someone bought our business, the first thing they'd do was cut out loads of things that seem illogical outside, and that would certainly be one of them. And I guarantee they'll make less money. Yes, we do look at costs very severely from time to time, but what we're really interested in is if we produce a really good experience for our customers and a good experience for the people working for us, then there's every chance, as long as we pick the right business, we've got the right strategy, then we'll make money. And so far, that seems to work very well.
What's your turnover at the moment?
Somewhere around 450 million.
Yeah.
With profits about just over 50 million.
Yeah, I think the plan is working, John. Talk to me about succession, because I want to return to this idea of family. And it is a rarity, isn't it, for a brand to last as long as Timpson has already, 150-odd years. But going forward, how do you perpetuate a brand? How does it continue to thrive?
Well, at least what we've got now is we've got a culture, and the culture is the thing which will still survive whatever we're doing. I mentioned before I do this exercise of doing an annual report for 15 years' time. And so you're looking at what difference is AI going to make to us? What changes are there going to be in technology? What are the other things that suit our skills that we might include? And should we go abroad? And all these sorts of things. But having looked at all that stuff, the conclusion I always come to that the most important thing is that we continue to employ people with personality and have the same culture. So that is the thing that's going to give us the continuity of always running the business in the same way. Because although we've got separate brands, we've got photo and we're dry cleaning as well as shoe repairs and key cutting, every bit of the business is run the same way. and I don't see any change to that. It's what we do might change quite dramatically. But I don't know. I mean, 20 years ago, we never dreamed that we would be involved as much in supermarket car parks, where we do a lot of our business now, or in photo, and certainly never thought we'd have a quite very substantial vending business. I don't know what's going to happen next, but the thread will be the way we treat people, particularly as we have artificial intelligence, which almost overrides people. I'll guarantee that the businesses that do the best are those that recognise the importance of people. They might use artificial intelligence to be efficient, but their business's character will still be there around the people they employ.
You said in passing, do we expand abroad or whatever is one of the several things that you consider. Would you ever expand abroad, or would that would it be more difficult to sustain this Timpson, pretty unique culture in a different territory?
I think it would. I have one outlet abroad which employs people, and that's a restaurant in Morzine in France, which is an amazing place that James bought and is making a great success of. But I think it's very difficult to reproduce the way we do our culture in another country, because their culture is different, and we've got to appreciate that. So I'd be keener to expand the business at home rather than abroad. But there are bits of it that could work, particularly the vending business, which is already started to do a little bit of overseas business. And we've got a business called Jeeves, which is based in London, which has got franchises all around the world. But we're not involved in running them, they're franchises, so that's a different thing. But this is something that a lot of businesses have made a mistake on by replicating what they do in another country and not realising that there are subtle differences between one country and another that make it much more difficult to work.
You were pro-leave, weren't you, in the Brexit vote? And you said you didn't like the rules of the EU and so on. And you thought it was a risk that was worth taking. How do you feel that has panned out?
I think I probably was a bit too optimistic in that I thought that we would be able to take more advantage about having our own rules. I think the big mistake actually was that the referendum was on a simple majority. It should have been a 60% or something like that. And then we wouldn't have had the big rift that result caused. And I don't think that the administration, whether they be the political side of it or the government side of things, has really worked to try and make Brexit work. I think there's been a strong feeling, well, the vote was wrong, but we'll make sure that it carries on as it was. And I don't think that's helped. So we've had the worst of both worlds, I think.
Let's talk about sustainability. It occurs to me that a lot of what you do at the heart of Timpson is sustainable, isn't it? You're mending things, you're cleaning things. It's the antithesis of chucking stuff away and wasting things. It sort of, in a way, has chimed with the way society is moving in some respects, do you think?
Yeah, I suppose it's fortuitous that most of what we do is helping to sustain. Although the shoe repair part of it is a declining part of the business, and that's the most sustainable part of what we do. We, like everyone else, we try and make sure that we help the environment as much as we can and so on. But
how do you do that? How do you go about doing that?
Well, the usual things, packaging, being careful on how we use energy. And we've had an overall report on how environmentally friendly we are. We do all that, but we do things pretty well as much as anyone else does. I can't say it's the centre of our thinking. I think it's more important that you run the business the way it should be run, and that sustainability is part of that, rather than being a pure object in its own right, because if you're not careful, you'll twist the business so it's sustainable but not successful.
Because it still has to make profit, doesn't it?
Well, it's still got to be there in 10 years' time. And that probably is an important part of sustainability, that you've got to create the cash to keep yourself in being.
You talk so wonderfully about your late wife, Alex. You were married for nearly 48 years. She died 10 years ago or so. And she was clearly so central to your way of thinking. And I've done a bit of reading up and listening to things you've done before, and you say that it was meeting her that made you change your way of thinking, that she had a huge influence on the way the business runs.
She only worked for the business for about 4 weeks, just before we got married. She worked in one of our shoe shops, typically in the children's department. Brought her own way of serving children's shoes, which was quite remarkable.
She loved children, didn't she?
Well, that was her thing. That's She was trained as a nursery nurse, and that's why we got involved with fostering after we'd had 3 children. She was quite a force of nature and quite eccentric in some ways, extravagant in others, but she was very down to earth in that she just got on and did things the way she wanted. You didn't have an argument with Alex because she was always right. There was once when we had a big argument. It was actually when we made our first big acquisition, and she thought I was making a mistake because she didn't want me to have too much more work to do. Anyway, I knew it was the right thing to do. And in the end, just before she died, which was about 20 years later after this deal, maybe longer, she did admit that on about one occasion I was right and she was wrong.
When we do this podcast, we often ask who was your most important hire in terms of making a success. And I think that Alex was perhaps your most important hire. Would you agree?
Well, it was a pretty good decision, wasn't it, really, to marry Alex? I mean, without her, none of this would have happened, I'm quite sure. Also, between us, we produced our previous chief executive, who's now run off to be prisons minister. So he was a pretty good hire. And we hardly ever hire people from outside. Most of our team start off as apprentices. Everyone in the field starts off as apprentices. We wouldn't dream of bringing an area manager in from outside. They wouldn't get it. They wouldn't get the culture.
You don't hire experts, then you make your own.
Correct. Occasionally, my finance director, Parish, who joined us 20 years ago and is currently acting as managing director while James is away, he probably would be the next one, I would say, if I was going to ask who's the most critical external hire, that would be Parish. But as I say, most of the team have grown up with us, and we spotted them at an early age of having the right personality, and they've grown into the job.
How would you say your leadership style has evolved over the very many years that you've been leading Timpson?
When I think about it, I've always been a little bit hands-off, partly because I've said very early on, I'm totally impractical, so don't ask me to repair a shoe. I'd be hopeless at that. So I've always had to let people get on with it. But I've spent a lot of my life thinking about what's happening rather than following command and control sort of thing. I've never done that. It's never been me. But I think I've spent my time trying to persuade other people that it's the way to do it. One thing I feel very comfortable about now is I've got a whole organisation that runs the way I want it to be run. We've got some really talented people, all of whom have started off with us as apprentices, and they all get it. That's where the energy comes from. You get someone from outside, you've got to explain how we do it. You don't need to explain, they just know instinctively that's the way it happens. It will continue to run without me, as it's been running without James while he's been prisons minister, because the whole organisation knows the direction and knows the way it happens and knows how they relate to each other.
And do you and James always agree about the direction of travel?
Yeah, because James is like his mother. I told you about my relation. That if you have a disagreement, I just let him win. No, we do think we think very much the same way, and he's just been much better at than me at putting it into practice. He's done an amazing job, and he's still got rather more energy than I have.
You are a prolific writer, aren't you? You're a regular newspaper columnist. You've got several very much acclaimed business management books, booklets on mental health and so on. And you seem to be so busy. You get a huge amount of satisfaction from all these different things you do, I think.
I haven't been writing I used to write for the Telegraph for 17 years. I stopped doing that when James got his ministerial appointment because I thought it was very clearly going to be a bit of a conflict of interest and he wouldn't be happy with what I was writing about business. And I think the way things have gone over the last nearly 2 years, it was the right decision. It would have been a bit tricky to not be critical of some of the things that have happened in business. So I've missed that. Some of the other things has just sort of come my way in terms of writing about mental health or writing little things, particularly about children's development and things I've learnt through our fostering and adoption of children.
How do you guard your own mental health? You seem a very optimistic person. You seem very positive. Have there been moments when it's all got too much for you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've had really bad times with stress, and I've had my periods of trying to find help myself. And part of the help was writing books about mental health. It's very difficult, because I don't know how anyone else thinks, and if you've got a real time where you lose confidence and you just can't face up to things, you look round and you see everyone else going around, and I look at the television, look at the newsreader, however it is, think, my goodness, I wish I was having their sort of time because they look so confident, and no one knows what's going on inside someone else's mind. But one thing I've discovered, the most important thing is to talk about it, which is what I've done to a lot of the people who work for us. And we now have 100 of our people who are trained mental health practitioners. They know enough to be able to talk to their people, and we've got 2 counsellors that they can go to. Because it's probably part of this modern world which is not as relaxed as we think it is. I think there are a lot of pressures on people, and people talk about economic pressures. It's the social pressures, I think, more than anything else. I mean, I'm too old to really get involved in social media, and I'm
very wise.
Thankful for that. But I think a lot of the mental health problems come people worried about whether they're good enough, whether there's someone else there who's doing it better than them, and really, the more we talk about these things, the more likely reality comes through.
Yeah.
I haven't had an easy time as far as that's concerned.
Did you think there are innate pressures to having your name? You're carrying on the work started by your great-grandfather, and you are a Timpson. And if you fail as a Timpson, I guess that has its own pressures, doesn't it?
I haven't really thought about that, but you're obviously right that you stick yourself up on a little bit of pedestal. And I mean, it's even worse when I start writing for newspapers and sort of have an opinion. You're always sat there ready to be shot down if you're not careful. Fortunately, I haven't had anything in the press that's been derogatory, but I could see it happen. Part of the reputation of the business, I suppose, is wrapped up in reputation of the family. And there's no doubt if we did something fiendishly wrong, we'd be very quickly in the press about it, and it wouldn't do the brand much good, actually.
No.
So there is that danger that by using the family and being very upfront the way we do it, the rest of us has got to live up to that reputation.
Yeah, it's like carrying it's a precious vase, isn't it? You don't want to drop the vase. It doesn't want to happen on your watch.
Yeah, I suppose that's the other side. But, I mean, it is lucky that there are not many names on the high street, as I say, are actually run by the people with the same name.
Absolutely. How much of it is down to luck? How much is luck? How much is timing?
We've had a lot of lucky moments. Even my father being fired was a bit of luck in the end, not for him. But if that hadn't have happened, we wouldn't have finished where we are now. We wouldn't have sold the shoe shops in the same way. We wouldn't. I think getting into key cutting when we did was lucky, really. I don't think we knew what we were doing, but we saw that before all our competitors in the shoe repair game, and they've nearly all gone. We're really the only one left still repairing shoes alongside the keys. So, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of luck, but you've got to be able to take advantage of the luck as well.
When you look back, would you have done anything differently? Was there any big error along the way that you regret now?
I think if I'd been really clever, I would have sold the shoe shops earlier than I did. But I don't think I certainly did not have the strength of personality to be able to do that against all the difficulty of selling something which was so part of yourself.
Yeah.
And it was too tough a decision to actually be able to look at it so coldly, to say, I'm going to sell the thing that my forefathers had created because it's just the right thing. No. I mean, we would have been a lot quicker in saying goodbye to some of the people who were not right in the business. But I think everyone's in that situation. I think that's probably the biggest mistake that most people make. But I learned a lot from the time when I was running the business on behalf of UDS when I was just a subsidiary. I learned a bit about business politics in that, but also I learned, not from them, but as soon as we became our own business again, the importance of cash flow and looking after the money. People make a mistake of thinking that they might say I made £20,000 last week. They didn't at all. Their turnover was 20,000, and they look at their profit, and that's much more important. But the really important thing to look at is the cash figure. I mean, we've for several years now made sure we've got money in the bank, because then no one else can tell us what to do. Because we now have no shareholders and no one lending us any money. And that's probably why we've been able to come up with this completely different upside-down management thing, which completely flies in the face of what you're taught at business school. The idea of actually managing by letting people to do what they want is a bit of a sort of bizarre thought, but I can tell you it's worked fantastically for us.
Would it work for others, do you think?
Oh.
Would you, what advice would you give other founders who might be listening to this, embarking on their own businesses?
Well, hasn't actually been printed up yet, but I've produced a little book about upside-down management for that very reason, to help others do the same. And in that book, I've got 3 examples of other organisations who've followed what we've done. I mean, one, I don't know whether he actually did follow precisely what we did, but Octopus Energy do things in a very similar way. And Greg says that we were there before him, which is nice. Mm-hmm. There's another business called Pizza Pilgrims, which is a new chain of pizza restaurants. And I happen to know the brothers who started it right at the beginning. And we talked about how they're going to run the business right from the start. So they've copied a bit of what we did. I'm very pleased to know. My greatest example of things I'm really pleased about is local primary school, where quite a lot of our foster children went.
You had 90 foster children, by the way, in case anyone doesn't realise this, over the years.
My late wife had those. I was just sort of hanging around watching it happen. They had a real problem at the local primary school. My late wife was a governor, and then she said, you're going to have to help. And I finished up being chairman of the governors and discovered that we had only got 41 kids, and the local authority wanted to close the school and didn't like the head. I quite liked him. And so I said, look, forget about the local authority, just ignore the computer on that, because he was trying to do everything. He was doing classes, and he was doing administrate. I said, just concentrate on look after those kids so that when they leave the school, they're well equipped for the rest of their lives. And we got him and his deputy on our leadership course and taught him about upside-down management and recruitment and all that. And we did a little bursary which helped bring in extra things into the curriculum of days out and bringing people into the school. My wife's term was to open the children's eyes to the world around them. So, God bless him, Steve, the head, did what I asked him to do in his own way. And within 3 years, the school was full.
Wow.
We got 168 kids. And then it got an Ofsted inspection, which was excellent, and became an academy. And it's now got 12 schools in the academy, run by the same guy that the local authority didn't like, who's now got an OBE for what he's done in running all these schools basically with the principles of upside-down management. And the best schools are those which have got an inspirational head who basically ignore all the rules but get really good people and let them get on with it. But convincing people is not that easy, so I've written another little book to try and do that.
Brilliant. You are, I hope you won't mind me saying, well past retirement age, Sir John. You could just take it easy, enjoy your lovely garden, enjoy your grandchildren. You don't, though, do you? You're still at it.
Well, I had this discussion when James was asked to be the prisons minister, because it did mean that I would have to do a bit more, because we've got a lot of colleagues who've put their faith in us. Families. I mean, I've got some where there's 4, 5, 6 people from the same family. They've put their lives at stake as far as we're concerned. They trust us. And they need to know that the family are behind it. Yes, I am in my 80s, but that's why I try and go around and visit a few shops every week when I'm not on holiday. I have a lot more holidays these days. And that's why when I go back to the office later on, I'll be doing a little video, because James does a video every Friday just to connect with everybody in the business to say, this is how it's going on, and a little message. So I keep that up while James is away.
So you're minding the shop while James is busy elsewhere.
Well, I must admit, I don't understand it as much. It goes a bit too quickly for me these days, and I recognise that. But I'm there to look after the culture, to make sure that we don't lose the most important things that's made us successful, which is this upside-down management thing. I'm there to protect it.
Sir John Timpson, thank you.
Thanks very much.